Welcome to the channel, where today we unravel the chillingly mysterious story of the 1967 Lincoln penny, a coin that, at first glance, should have been ordinary, unremarkable, just another 1-cent piece churned out during a time of national transition and industrial pressure. But what if a small mistake made it one of the rarest coins ever struck? A coin that whispers secrets from the heart of the U.S. Mint itself and beckons collectors into an ever-deepening maze of shadowy anomalies. Inexplicable craftsmanship, and baffling design flaws that defy logic and continue to elude even the most seasoned numismatists, because in 1967, a year already heavy with social upheaval, the Mint faced the aftershock of the Coinage Act of 1965, having suspended mint marks to deter hoarding, and amidst this deliberate anonymity, the Lincoln cent became an enigma factory, birthing pieces that carry no visible mint marks but exhibit mint-specific signatures, planchet compositions and strike pressures that whisper of Denver or San Francisco origins even when the coin claims no allegiance. How can that be, and why have specimens surfaced with ghosted impressions of the missing D or S, as if something tried to be hidden and failed completely? And why do some 1967 cents reveal doubling so aggressive on the date and liberty that it seems less like mechanical error and more like a frantic restrike, as if someone in the mint tried to overwrite a mistake so profound it had to be buried in plain sight? Yet the doubling persists, not just in one location but spread inconsistently across thousands of specimens like echoes from misaligned dies used in haste or secrecy, while some examples display eerie die clashes that shouldn't exist, faint outlines of Lincoln's profile where there should be none, wheat stalks bleeding through the memorial reverse as if the past is clawing its way back into the present, challenging the very idea that this cent belongs only to 1967 and not to a deeper, time-blurred lineage of experimental trials, forgotten transitions, or suppressed prototypes. And then there are those elusive pieces where the designer's initials, FG, appear shadowed, barely visible, flickering in and out of existence under shifting light like a ghost tethered to the copper surface. What does it mean when the initials themselves seem to vanish, and who authorized such flawed dies to be used at all, unless it was never authorized, unless something broke protocol in ways still unacknowledged in mint records, because for every official die used, there were test dies, error dies, discarded but not destroyed dies, and the legend grows that some of these may have found their way into actual circulation, passed from hand to hand unnoticed until the right eye caught the wrong coin and unearthed inconsistencies that experts could not agree on, sparking internal memos, suppressed documents, and confidential correspondences between mint officials who feared what might surface next. Yet it's not just the mint workers and archivists who sent something amiss. Collectors who've spent decades tracing these anomalies report sightings of 1967 cents that bear overlapping designs, impossible strike-throughs where foreign objects appear to have been embedded mid-mint, or worse, coins that feature phantom outlines of prior designs like spectral imprints left from earlier coins once struck on the same machinery, forcing us to ask, are we looking at innocent errors or the unintended footprints of a cover-up stretching back decades? And if the Coinage Act of 1965 was meant to bring clarity and uniformity, why did the years that followed, including 1967, only yield confusion and chaos in the form of misaligned collars, off-center strikes, planchets that deviate in weight, tone, and texture, and coins that, by all reasonable logic, should not exist and yet do, with copper that shimmers in strange hues, carbon spotting patterns that resemble intentional symbols, and edge details so warped that they resemble foreign minting techniques, as if this cent was part of a different lineage altogether? Could a rogue die have been borrowed or repurposed from a foreign mint partnership, or was this the product of an unrecorded test strike for a new automated system that failed to calibrate correctly? And why do retired mint employees speak in hushed tones about the die room, a place where experiments took shape and some were never meant to leave, yet somehow did? And now these elusive pennies circulate like urban legends come to life, a secret history embedded in copper, and every new specimen with an unclassified blemish, an impossible overlay, or an undocumented feature adds fuel to a fire that has burned for over half a century in collectors' circles, leading some to spend lifetimes obsessing over this single year, building walls of evidence, drawing charts that link known varieties to unexplained discoveries, constructing theories of lost dies, resurfacing during late-night shifts, or sabotage by disillusioned engravers desperate to leave a hidden mark on history. And through all of it runs a thread of treasure-hunting madness, of whispered trades at coin shows, of envelopes slipped under tables containing cents with invisible features only visible under extreme magnification, Lincoln's cheek oddly recessed, the pillars of the memorial showing minuscule tilts inconsistent with all other production years, a slight bulge beneath the date, as though concealing another number beneath, feeding speculation that overstruck planchets from previous years were used illegally or mistakenly, or that recycled metals from foreign coinage infiltrated the composition during a period of internal disarray, and every numismatist who encounters one of these pieces carries the same question: is this the coin that proves everything, that unlocks the secret, that exposes a moment of chaos within the mint so deep it's never been officially admitted? And if so, how many more are out there, sitting in forgotten jars, in childhood collections, in coffee tins at estate sales, waiting to be found by someone who understands what to look for: the slight twist of a serif, the ghostly trace of a phantom mint mark, the unnatural texture under a microscope, or the impossible doubling that appears to show movement, as if the coin itself is caught mid-transformation? And as we dive deeper into these sightings, these stories, these relentless details that never quite align with official mint records, we're left with one final question that refuses to be silenced: was the 1967 Lincoln cent a mere casualty of rushed production and transitional policy, or is it a cipher, a quietly circulated relic of decisions never meant to be made public, a copper talisman carrying the weight of forgotten intent, buried errors, and the faint but undeniable possibility that somewhere, right now, someone holds a version of this coin that was never meant to exist? And they don't even know it yet. Next. 1998 1-cent coin. Today we plunge headfirst into one of the most perplexing and obsessively studied mysteries in the entire world of U.S. coinage, the 1998 Lincoln penny, a coin that by all appearances should have faded into obscurity among the billions of copper-plated zinc cents churned out by the Denver Mint during a year most numismatists once thought held no surprises. But what if a small mistake made it one of the rarest coins ever struck, a coin cloaked in confusion, hiding design secrets, unintentional anomalies, and subtle inconsistencies that experts still argue over more than 2 decades later, a coin so deceptively ordinary that only the most discerning eyes have noticed what shouldn't be there, or what should be but mysteriously isn't, as if the machinery itself momentarily broke free from its programmed routine and whispered through the metal a story no one at the U.S. Mint dared to write down, because the 1998 penny was minted at a pivotal moment when modern minting technology was colliding with decades-old die maintenance procedures, and somewhere in that junction of old and new, flaws were born that defied classification. Some coins from this year in mint bear design elements that appear misaligned, doubled in unnatural directions, or faintly ghosted as if the impressions were laid atop spectral images from another die altogether. And as reports trickled in of 1998 cents showing a peculiar elevation in the details of Lincoln's ear or the steps of the memorial reverse, strangely full on some, disturbingly blurred on others, collectors began to wonder if these were signs of experimental dies or unauthorized retooling attempts quietly conducted on the production floor, and the deeper they looked, the more the anomalies began to emerge like threads unraveling from a tightly guarded tapestry, off-center strikes that distort the date without disturbing the bust, invisible designer initials that vanish under certain angles of light, and coins that appear to possess the hallmarks of a wide AM reverse typically associated only with Philadelphia issues of the same year, a crossover that official mint records insist should not, could not, ever happen at Denver. Yet these hybrids exist, surfacing sporadically like artifacts from a secret production trial buried deep within a bureaucratic system that has always been quick to deny, redact, or forget. And it's this denial that fuels the obsession, because every unexplained 1998 variant discovered fuels speculation that a forbidden batch of reverse dies may have been mixed, accidentally or otherwise, into Denver's press lines, perhaps due to a silent directive or clerical mishap that no one ever expected the public to detect, and yet they did, and those who did never stopped searching, because some of these coins don't just carry the wrong spacing in AM, they feature traces of doubling so refined, so deliberate looking, that the question isn't whether they're real but whether they were ever meant to be minted at all. And when multiple specimens emerged showing pronounced die clashes with fragments of Lincoln's profile imprinted in reverse on the memorial building itself, features that simply should not appear without catastrophic alignment failures, theories exploded, some suggesting that retired dies were reactivated for testing in late-night shifts, others speculating about phantom die varieties created during transitional engraver training sessions, and then came the whispers of a short-lived experimental die variety crafted to test subtle spacing adjustments for the approaching design changes of the early 2000s, dies that were meant to be destroyed but perhaps weren't, and when former Mint employees began to hint, years later, that not all of Denver's 1998 die logs matched the number of coins struck, the air thickened with secrecy and suppressed truths, as if some within the Mint knew more than they could safely admit, and those who dared to speak only did so under anonymity, their stories dripping with references to miscatalogued reverse dies, impromptu swaps during scheduled maintenance, and undocumented test strikes that were allegedly supposed to be destroyed but somehow entered general circulation, perhaps passed off as routine output to keep numbers aligned on paper, and in that chaos, a legend was born. And the hunt intensified as collectors around the country began scouring their change, studying magnified photos of 1998 pennies. Seeking the telltale signs, the spacing of the A and M in America, the slope of the G and FG, the texture anomalies on Lincoln's cheek, the way the strike depth shifts unnaturally across the field like a heartbeat frozen in metal, and the more people searched, the more anomalies surfaced, planchets that appear to have laminations or blisters unexplained by heat or pressure, coins with thinly ghosted remnants of letters in the fields, as though another design had once been there and was later removed, yet not completely erased, and in these oddities, a new breed of collector emerged, less interested in value, more consumed by the truth, building entire databases, photographic archives, even private forums where members compared shadow placements and dye deterioration patterns to identify coins that no grading authority could confidently label, and those who found matching anomalies across multiple specimens, coins from different states and sources, began piecing together maps of distribution, as if these misstruck scents were leaving a trail, pointing to a forgotten moment in the mint's history when oversight failed or something deeper was at play, and some have even suggested that the 1998 anomalies mark the emergence of an internal experiment with microdesign evolution, tests for how subtle changes might be made without public announcement, but whether intentional or accidental. The resulting coins exist in defiance of official narrative, their presence like echoes of a lost event, their details stubbornly refusing to align with either known wide AM or close AM definitions, occupying a liminal space between classifications, frustrating researchers and igniting feuds between leading numismatists whose reputations rest on defining the undefinable, and it's this friction between what is known and what is unprovable that has given rise to conspiracies, to rumors of destroyed documentation, of anonymous letters sent to major coin publications hinting at dye swaps ordered from above or retired dyes that never made it to the furnaces, and the tension only grows when you consider how many of these anomalies were discovered not in high-grade mint sets or sealed rolls but in everyday circulation, hiding in drawers, in change jars, passed unknowingly through gas stations and coffee shops, and every such discovery renews the question, how many more are out there, lying in wait, coins that were never meant to be created, much less found, and what does it say about the infrastructure of the U.S. Mint in 1998 that such pieces could have escaped unnoticed, or perhaps, noticed but unchallenged, allowed to flow quietly through the system to avoid larger scrutiny, and what else might have gone unrecorded if these coins, against all odds, survived the crushing machinery of bureaucratic secrecy and emerged blinking into the hands of those who know how to see, because each coin holds within it a secret, a code embedded not in language but in strike depth, dye polish lines, reverse spacing, rim distortion, the invisible hand of human error or hidden intent, and the collectors who chase them are not simply hobbyists but investigators of a silent history, and they understand that the 1998 Lincoln penny may yet be the key to unlocking not just a single minting anomaly, but a pattern, a message, a lineage of secrets stretching back across decades, woven into the very fabric of American coinage, and the more they search, the closer they come to proving what no official report has dared to say, that somewhere within the locked vaults and shredded logs of the U.S. Mint lies the full story of how a routine coin turned into a legend, how a demarked penny from a year few paid attention to became the epicenter of one of the most compelling unsolved puzzles in numismatic history, and as this story continues to unfold, one truth becomes increasingly impossible to deny. This coin was never supposed to exist the way it does, and yet it does. Against all odds, pulling us ever deeper into its mystery with each clue, each anomaly, each whisper from copper and zinc that dares us to keep looking, because the secret it carries is not done speaking yet. Next. 1996 Lincoln penny. Today we venture deep into one of the most elusive, perplexing, and fiercely debated mysteries ever to emerge from the hallowed and often secretive halls of the U.S. Mint, the 1996 Lincoln penny, a seemingly ordinary 1-cent coin that has, over the years, revealed itself to be anything but mundane, raising the pulse of seasoned collectors and obsessive numismatists alike as they uncover one baffling anomaly after another and ask the question that has echoed through the community like a thunderclap in a silent archive: what if a small mistake made it one of the rarest coins ever struck? What if a fleeting slip in an otherwise routine year triggered a chain of irregularities so vast, so quietly layered, that the entire fabric of 1990 SIXS coinage has to be re-evaluated under a lens of mystery and buried truth, because while the records show business as usual, high mintage numbers, no reported major dye shifts, a straightforward continuation of the Lincoln Memorial design. It's the pieces that slip through the cracks, or perhaps slip deliberately under the radar, that now call into question what really happened behind the scenes during that enigmatic production year, and why so many 1996 cents have surfaced with unsettling inconsistencies, cents with ghostly die clashes where Lincoln's bust seems to protrude from the wrong side of the coin, coins with vanishing mint marks or D.S that float just above the date like spectral punctuation, coins with doubling so extreme that liberty appears to ripple like a heat mirage, with outlines of earlier impressions shimmering beside their corrected forms as though two moments in time were fused into a single strike. And then there are the bizarre planchet issues, cents that display rough, bubbled surfaces as if the metal itself rejected the strike, or lamination cracks that seem to expose something underneath, as if the coin hides a second identity beneath its outer shell, leading some to speculate that planchets from foreign contract coinage were mistakenly used in Denver or Philadelphia. And if that's true, what else might have been struck on incompatible blanks, or worse, on test planchets never meant to leave the facility, yet they did, and collectors have found them, cataloged them, obsessed over them, coins that appear almost handmade in their peculiarity, where details like Lincoln's eye or the steps of the memorial blur, stretch, or fade at impossible angles, as though the dies themselves were warped or misaligned in ways that simple mechanical error can't explain. And that's where the obsession deepens, because isolated errors can be dismissed, but patterns, emerging from multiple sources across the country, cannot, especially when they include phantom initials where the FG of Frank Gasparo should be, and in some cases, those initials aren't just faint, they're completely gone, not worn away but struck absent, as if the die was never engraved with them, leading to whispered speculation about prototype dies, unauthorized repolishing, or the terrifying possibility that undocumented experimental dies were used during production, perhaps briefly, perhaps intentionally, perhaps in response to an internal directive that was quickly buried and never entered into official records. And when you follow the trail of these coins, you begin to hear the stories, not rumors, but actual documented accounts, from collectors who've uncovered 1996 cents with features no guidebook mentions, overlapping dates, recessed letters, clash marks so deep they appear three-dimensional, coins with strange edges or rim distortions that suggest misfed collars or foreign planchet sizes, all hinting at a year when either quality control was dangerously lax or something far stranger was at play. And while the Mint has made no formal acknowledgement of these oddities, private correspondence leaked by former employees, retired engravers, and die technicians points to incidents in late 1995 and early 1996 involving emergency die reassignments, sudden shifts in production priorities, and a handful of destroyed or missing dies whose disappearance was never publicly explained, fueling theories that a rogue batch of test dies, possibly part of a shelved redesign initiative, was mistakenly or deliberately reintroduced into circulation, which might explain the emergence of 1996 cents-bearing design elements more consistent with earlier or alternate versions of the memorial building, or coins with letterforms not matching the official typography of the year. And if even a fraction of these claims are true, it would mean that within the vast ocean of 1,996 pennies, coins we handle without a second thought, lie a handful of anomalies that could rewrite the official narrative of U.S. coinage in the mid-1990s. Anomalies that point to either a critical breach of protocol or an orchestrated test kept secret from the public. And what's more chilling is that these aren't theoretical. These coins exist, held in private collections, passed from hand to hand at coin shows, analyzed under microscopes that reveal anomalies so subtle, so inconsistent, that grading services have struggled to categorize them without opening a broader investigation. And each time one of these mystery cents is discovered, it sparks a renewed frenzy of searching, through bank rolls, estate collections, pocket change, and junk jars, because the thrill of potentially holding a piece of unauthorized history is too powerful to ignore, and each clue, each tiny inconsistency, pulls you deeper into the rabbit hole. Why do some 1996 pennies show mismatched polishing patterns that suggest the die face was reworked with improper tools? Why do certain specimens exhibit ghost impressions of the date just above the actual digits, like shadows from a previous strike? And why have some researchers found weak overlays of wheat stalks beneath the memorial design? Are these artifacts of recycled dies or the result of hubbing experiments conducted in secret? And if so, why were none of these anomalies formally reported? And what else was quietly struck, tested, destroyed, or, by accident or by intent, released into circulation during a year that, until recently, was assumed to be clean? And when you examine the broader context of 1996, it only deepens the mystery. A period of quiet transition at the Mint, with early preparations underway for the state quarters program, new engraving equipment being tested, and several engravers nearing retirement, creating a perfect storm for confusion, oversight, and the possibility of experimental strikes slipping through a system stretched thin and watched by fewer experienced eyes, and with every new discovery, from coins with reverse designs that appear stretched or melting to those with partially overlaid legends or vanishing rim details, the sense grows that the 1996 penny is not just an error coin, but a cipher, a relic of hidden process changes, lost die trials, and a silent story the mint never meant to tell. And now that this story has begun to surface through obsessive research, through side-by-side die comparisons, through whispers shared in collector forums and cryptic mentions in forgotten trade journals, the community finds itself drawn ever deeper into an unsolved puzzle, because if so much could go unnoticed in 1 year, what else might still be hiding in plain sight, waiting to be seen by the right pair of eyes under the right light? And how many of these unclassifiable anomalies have already slipped through countless hands, mistaken for wear, dismissed as damage, tossed back into circulation, lost again to the tides of everyday commerce? And what if the coin that unlocks everything, the smoking gun, the undeniable proof of a lost chapter in minting history, is still out there, nestled at the bottom of a change jar or hidden in a roll sealed by time, daring someone, anyone, to notice that its features are just slightly off? And in that subtle deviation lies the explosive truth that the 1996 penny is not what we were told it was, but something far rarer, far stranger, and far more compelling than we ever imagined. Next. 1990 Lincoln penny. Today we plunge into one of the most confounding mysteries in the history of American coinage, a numismatic labyrinth centered on a coin that was never supposed to raise questions, never supposed to ignite obsession, and yet has become the epicenter of a decades-long search for answers, the 1990 Lincoln cent. A coin whose surface seems familiar, unremarkable even, until one realizes that beneath its plain copper sheen lies a story riddled with anomalies, oversights, ghost impressions, and chilling inconsistencies that continue to spark debate, suspicion, and relentless treasure hunting to this very day. Because what if a small, overlooked detail in 1990, a shift in production technique, a misplaced punch, or a forgotten prototype die led to one of the rarest and most elusive minting errors ever to escape the watchful eye of the U.S. Mint, slipping through layers of bureaucratic control to circulate freely among millions of mundane coins? What if a small mistake, invisible to most, transformed a routine penny into a key to a mystery that has haunted collectors for over 3 decades? It begins, as all great coin enigmas do, not with what was announced publicly, but with what was quietly changed behind closed doors. When in 1990 the mint made a crucial shift, the Philadelphia facility stopped using a visible mint mark on the Lincoln cent, meaning all standard coins struck there would now be devoid of the familiar P, a move that should have streamlined production but instead became the very trigger for confusion, because in that same year, a small number of coins struck in Philadelphia inexplicably retained a D mint mark, a detail that should have been impossible, and suddenly, the hunt was on, as whispers spread of 1990 cents bearing features out of place for their region, or their facility, coins that seemed to exist in contradiction with official mint records. And then came the greatest anomaly of all, a coin so elusive that for years it was debated whether it truly existed, the 1990 proof Lincoln cent lacking the S mint mark, a proof that should have come from San Francisco but appeared blank, void, silent. How could such a glaring absence occur on a proof coin, struck with deliberate care, using specially prepared dies, under rigorous supervision? And how could that same year produce business strikes riddled with their own strange features, planchets that appear improperly annealed, resulting in surfaces so grainy they resemble sandpaper under magnification, or others that show signs of excessive die polishing, erasing parts of Lincoln's ear, hair, and beard? What does it mean when initials disappear, not due to wear, but from the very moment of their creation? And what of the coins found with shadowy doubling across, "In God We Trust," or the digits in 1990, not clear enough for textbook classification, yet undeniable in appearance, prompting collectors to ask whether these were signs of unreported doubled dies or mechanical doubling stemming from a rushed or flawed hubbing process? And what explains the eerie alignment shifts where the reverse Lincoln memorial appears ever so slightly rotated, or where one column blurs into another as if smeared? And could these be the result of misaligned dies, or worse, a clashing of incompatible die pairs, mistakenly paired during the final days of the old manual systems that still lingered at the mint, and when retired mint workers speak anonymously about die lockers being miscatalogued or test strikes being accidentally released into circulation? Are they referring to events like those that birthed the 1990 cent anomalies? Are their coins from that year bearing unapproved design tweaks, marginally reshaped devices, spacing adjustments between the letters of United States of America, or an imperceptible widening in Lincoln's lapel, introduced by a technician testing a revision that never received full authorization? And why do some 1990 cents appear to have a slightly convex obverse, as though the die pressure had not been calibrated correctly, resulting in a subtle warping of the planchet? Could this be linked to a briefly used press model that was cycled in and out of service for evaluation? And why were several coins discovered in Georgia and Kentucky that bear a seemingly standard Philadelphia design but have punch irregularities around the rim, as if a mint mark had been added and then removed? Is it possible a rogue punch was used, or that transitional dies were repurposed without proper inspection? And if these coins shouldn't exist, why are they so consistent in their errors? How do so many of them share the same unique positioning of the date, the same soft strike on Lincoln's jawline, or the same vanishing points near the word Liberty? And what of the die clash specimens, where ghostly outlines of the Lincoln Memorial appear faintly on the obverse, sometimes intersecting with Lincoln's bust in ways that suggest not a single clash, but repeated, brutal overstrikes? And what kind of oversight would allow those to enter public hands? Could the mint have been experimenting with new alloy treatments, pressure calibrations, or even die finishes? And what if, during that transitional chaos, certain batches were struck using outdated or mispaired tools, or blanks sourced from a different intended run? And why do certain 1990 cents, when viewed under spectral light, reveal strange bands of reflectivity inconsistent with copper-plated zinc? Could it be that planchets meant for a different coin, or even a different denomination, were mistakenly loaded, and in a year when the mint was quietly phasing out certain experimental dies, could some have been mistakenly pressed into service one last time, resulting in subtle variances now buried in forgotten pockets, bank vaults, and discarded rolls? And as collectors and researchers obsessively document minute variations in font thickness, spacing, and relief, chasing after what some call the phantom die, a hypothesized master die that deviates ever so slightly from known production versions, could it be that we're not just dealing with one mistake, but with the footprint of an entire lost process, a series of undocumented events that produced coins out of step with their time, out of alignment with the mint's official narrative? And when archival documents are reviewed and gaps are found in the production logs, when shipments of blanks go unaccounted for, when no one can explain why hundreds of 1990 cents seem to carry the ghost of a San Francisco proof or the trace of a missing mint mark, we are forced to ask whether this wasn't an accident, but the visible scar of a breakdown in the mint's record-keeping. And what if some employees knew, saw, even tried to intervene, but were overruled, silenced, transferred, and now, decades later, these coins have become more than anomalies? They are evidence, relics of a moment when the mint lost control, even for a moment, and in that moment, unleashed coins that now circulate like cryptic artifacts. And still, they surface, 1990 cents with incomplete rims, clash marks that defy minting logic, microscopic repunching that suggests retooled dies never authorized for that year. And the more they surface, the more questions emerge. How many escaped? How many were destroyed? And how many still lie hidden, mistaken for ordinary change? Passed unknowingly through generations, their true nature undiscovered. So as the story deepens, as researchers compile shadow registries of known specimens and whisper about lost dies buried in forgotten mint vaults, the hunt becomes more urgent, because if these coins were never supposed to exist, then each discovery is an act of revelation, a tiny rebellion against the silence of institutional error. And if you've ever held a 1990 cent and wondered if it looked just slightly off, if the letters seemed ghostly, if the design felt distorted in a way you couldn't explain, you might be holding a fragment of this great numismatic mystery, a piece of a larger truth still unfolding. Stay tuned, because the deeper we dig into the 1990 Lincoln cent, the more the evidence suggests we are standing at the edge of something far bigger than a simple minting mistake, something that could rewrite the history of American coinage as we know it. Next. 1991 Lincoln penny. Today we plunge into the haunting mystery of the 1991 Lincoln penny, a coin so seemingly common, so thoroughly dismissed by the untrained eye, that its deeper secrets have remained buried beneath decades of casual circulation. Yet what if a small mistake made it one of the rarest coins ever struck? What if beneath the copper shell lies a story of manufacturing anomalies, design inconsistencies, and bureaucratic oversights that only now are being pieced together by a network of obsessed collectors and forensic numismatists determined to uncover the truth hidden in plain sight? Because while the 1991 penny was meant to be just another step in the long and unbroken series of Lincoln Memorial cents, evidence has emerged of strange behavior inside the mints, Philadelphia and Denver both, where coins were reportedly struck using mismatched dies, misaligned collars, warped planchets, or repurposed hubs from years prior, creating an array of numismatic phantoms that should not exist, and yet they do, in pocket change, in old bank rolls, in collections handed down from those who noticed something wasn't quite right but couldn't name it, and it all began with the realization that some 1991 cents displayed what could only be described as ghost features, subtle outlines beneath the lettering, shadows under the bust, doubling in places where the dies should have been flawless, and as collectors began digging into these anomalies, they uncovered far more than just mechanical errors. They uncovered hints of something bigger, coins with missing designer initials, or ones where FG appears almost handwritten, fading into the field like it was never meant to be struck at all, and worse yet, coins bearing faint traces of mint marks that defy every recorded die pairing, like 1991 P coins with a ghosted D that seems to pulse under magnification, or 1991 D coins showing signs of tampering, of overpunching, of emergency re-engraving that left behind jagged outlines around the mint mark. And then came the whispers of reverse designs that didn't match standard 1991 dies, coins with slightly off spacing in United States of America, with rooflines on the memorial that sag, elongate, or appear distorted, as if a foreign hub had been used briefly, illegally, or experimentally. And this only fueled the theories that began to spiral across collector forums, private meetings, and hidden archives, theories that suggested a rogue set of dies had been pressed into service after hours, that experimental hubs had been deployed during a training program, that transitional reverse dies, possibly meant for future redesigns or carried over from a quietly cancelled commemorative program, had been fitted onto 1991 cent dies as part of an unauthorized trial that was quickly buried by mint supervisors under the pressure of maintaining deadlines and production quotas, and still, the anomalies kept surfacing, coins with off-center strikes but perfect legends. Memorial columns clashing with Lincoln's profile in reverse brockage that should have been caught immediately but somehow weren't, and then there were the planchet issues, some coins appearing bubbled, thin, or cracked, but not from post-mint damage, from within, as if the metal mix itself had changed without warning, possibly due to a misallocated shipment of foreign planchets from an international minting contract, which if true would mean the U.S. Mint may have knowingly or unknowingly struck 1991 cents on blanks intended for another nation's currency. And the more these coins were analyzed, under high-powered microscopes, through metallurgical testing, via die tracking software, the more impossible it became to write them off as coincidence, because the errors weren't just varied, they were specific, repeatable, and regionally concentrated, suggesting entire batches of anomalous coins released in narrow waves, like echoes of something that happened briefly, almost invisibly, behind the walls of the mint. And that's when stories started to surface from within, former employees referencing a lost lot of dies that were pulled mid-production, of tool and die specialists being reassigned after internal disputes, of documentation mysteriously going missing during internal audits, and some even claimed there were production logs stamped confidential that mentioned non-standard obverse configuration tests, and non-conforming die polishing anomalies being run in Denver during a late summer shift, and the implications of that, of an institution designed for precision slipping just enough to let these flawed or experimental coins into circulation, fueled a new generation of treasure hunters, people now combing through 1991 pennies not for value, but for clues, for doubled letters in the date, for clash marks near the rim, for signs of die fatigue in areas where the standard issue should remain sharp, and with each coin came more questions. Why do some 1991 cents show clear signs of hub doubling on e pluribus unum but not on the date? How can the same error manifest across different cities, and most disturbingly, how many of these coins were quietly pulled, recirculated, or buried before anyone could examine them? And as the hunt intensifies, a chilling hypothesis begins to take shape, that the 1991 Lincoln cent may be more than just a simple misstep, but a cipher, a coded message in copper and zinc from a minting process gone partially rogue, and that within the handful of verified anomalies, repunched mint marks, doubled dies, die clashes showing full reverse outlines on the obverse, lies the evidence of a manufacturing crisis that was never disclosed, a failure or experiment so risky it was scrubbed from official records, leaving behind only the coins themselves as witnesses to a moment in history that the mint will never confirm. And as collectors continue to study each variation, each microscopic detail, the obsession only deepens, because for every new discovery there is a counter-anomaly. 1991 cents with oversized letters, with vertical striations across Lincoln's cheek as if a scraping tool had been used in haste, coins whose rims appear misaligned on one side only, and even a few rare specimens where the copper plating bubbles outward as though something beneath the surface is trying to rise. And what if that something is the truth? And what if that truth is still being buried one coin at a time? And if so, then the only hope of uncovering it lies in the hands of those who refuse to stop searching, because this isn't just about a coin, it's about a secret, a moment in the historical record that was scrubbed too clean, a glitch in the mechanical heartbeat of a minting system that is supposed to be perfect but in 1991 was anything but, and the only way to piece together what happened is to listen to the coins themselves, each misaligned strike, each ghosted mint mark, each die clash and vanishing initial forming part of a forgotten sentence in a language of metal, one that numismatists and collectors are only just beginning to translate, and somewhere out there, possibly in a child's penny jar, a forgotten coin folder, or a sealed roll untouched since 1991, the final piece of the puzzle waits to be found, the coin that will tie together all the evidence, all the mystery, all the whispered rumors of retooled dies, unofficial hub testing, and lost production records, and once it's found, it may finally prove that the 1991 Lincoln penny is not merely a product of mass production, but a relic of hidden history, a flawed, whispered artifact of decisions never meant to be revealed. Next. 2015 D Lincoln penny. Today we unlock the eerie, pulse-quickening mystery of a coin most people handle without a second thought, the 2015 D Lincoln penny, a 1-cent piece so deceptively mundane that it passes through countless hands each day unnoticed, and yet beneath its quiet copper surface lies a storm of unanswered questions, impossible anomalies, and whispered secrets that have ignited a firestorm of obsession within the numismatic world, because what if a small mistake made it one of the rarest coins ever struck? What if within this ocean of modern coins there exists not just a production error but a full-blown numismatic anomaly born out of a perfect storm of modern automation, hidden procedural changes, and oversight failures that not only slipped past quality control but may have been deliberately concealed? And as collectors across the country began to take a closer look at their 2015 D pennies, a haunting pattern started to emerge, coins with distorted lettering, ghost-like impressions of features that shouldn't be there, mint marks that look too bold or not bold enough, initials vanishing under even the slightest tilt of the light, and all of it leading to one unavoidable conclusion: something went wrong at the Denver Mint in 2015, something the official reports would never admit, something the production records couldn't fully explain. And as investigators poured through the numbers, combed the batches, and traced coin roll distributions, they began finding coins that bore the unmistakable signs of die deterioration far too early in the production cycle, as if the dies themselves were flawed from the start or were recycled beyond the limits of tolerance, producing pennies with rippling fields, sunken cheeks on Lincoln's profile, strange ridge-like trails through the words "I in God we trust" and "E pluribus unum," and most shockingly, full die clashes that imprinted ghost images of the reverse into the obverse fields, creating freakish shadows across Lincoln's bust like echoes of a second coin pressing through from the other side. And it wasn't just one coin, or even 10, it was a mounting wave of strange specimens, some off-center, others featuring bubbles beneath the copper plating, tiny planchet splits near the rim, or doubling that defied logic. Not just isolated to one part of the coin but radiating outward across the entire design like a reverberation from a malfunctioning hub press. And while the Mint publicly treated 2015 as a normal year, internally there were signs of chaos, accelerated production quotas, changes to blank sourcing contracts, a rumored shift in die preparation chemicals, and even talk of a software glitch in the digital die alignment system. But nothing was ever confirmed, and those who looked too closely found themselves facing a wall of silence. Because when one retired technician anonymously claimed that a batch of reverse dies had been cross-fitted onto obverse shafts for an experimental reconfiguration and then mistakenly used on the live floor, the Mint declined to respond. And when photos surfaced of coins where the D mint mark was almost floating, disconnected from the rim, slightly rotated, as if punched by a misaligned hand tool instead of a hydraulic system, it was dismissed as an illusion. But the evidence kept growing, with coins turning up in sealed mint rolls that showed signs of struck-through debris, greasy die filling, and in some cases, lettering so faint it looked eroded, leading to speculation that improperly cleaned dies had created a widespread ghosting effect now seen across multiple states. And with these irregularities came theories of rogue Mint employees running unauthorized trials during night shifts, of internal test programs using hybrid dies with modified hubs to assess long-term wear, of private contractors introducing contaminated blanks into the system to test plating adhesion without disclosure. And each theory pulled collectors deeper, because these weren't just random accidents, they formed a pattern, a hidden trail of production inconsistencies that the public was never supposed to see. And as the obsession grew, so did the findings. Some 2015 D cents showed diagonal abrasions that matched known hub reworking marks but were located in areas that should never be affected by polishing. Others displayed low relief doubling on Lincoln's bow tie or the lower beard line, inconsistencies so precise they had to originate at the die creation level, and when side-by-side overlays revealed micro-adjustments in the spacing of Liberty and the date, the theory took hold that the mint may have silently rehubbed master dies mid-year and attempted to blend the transition without public notice, and this opened the floodgates to even more disturbing reports of coins with recessed memorial outlines barely visible beneath the shield reverse, as if an old die had been polished and reused without fully removing prior engravings of plating inconsistencies that suggested multi-sourced blanks being processed simultaneously without proper segregation, and even whispers of a very small number of shield reverses where the lines of the banner showed doubling unlike any ever seen in modern sense, almost as if there were two dies pressed together out of sync, and if even one of these theories proves true, it suggests a catastrophic lapse in mint protocol, one compounded by silence, secrecy, and a willingness to bury experimental outcomes in everyday circulation. And as collectors mount digital archives, create tracking maps of where anomalies cluster by region, and assemble reference guides based on pixel-level photographic analysis, the 2015 penny takes on a life of its own, not as a coin, but as a cipher, an unsolved riddle inscribed in copper and zinc, a trace of something hidden beneath layers of corporate silence and procedural misdirection, and the more the pieces come together, the clearer the picture becomes. These weren't isolated one-off mistakes, they were symptoms of a deeper malfunction, perhaps even a cover-up, where rogue or flawed processes produced a class of coins that could only have been created if multiple systems failed at once, or were intentionally manipulated, and the only way to make sense of them is to keep searching, to keep cataloging, to keep peeling back the layers of error that point to a truth no one in officialdom wants to admit, and somewhere out there, maybe still resting unnoticed in a sealed roll or tucked into a child's piggy bank, there is a specimen that holds the final piece of the story, a 2015 Lincoln cent that bears all the anomalies at once, a ghosted reverse, a misaligned mint mark, vanished initials, clash marks in both fields, die trails, and doubling combined into a single impossible configuration that cannot be explained by any normal minting process, and when it's found, it will not only confirm everything collectors have suspected, but rewrite what we thought we knew about the modern minting era, about quality assurance, about the reliability of mass-produced coinage in a world increasingly ruled by automation and digital tracking, because the 2015 penny is more than just an error, it is a breach in the narrative, a splintered artifact of a year when the machines faltered, the systems blinked, and something slipped through that was never meant to survive, but did, and now it whispers to those who listen, calling treasure hunters, researchers, and historians to uncover its truth one anomaly at a time, until the full picture emerges, not just of a single coin, but of a hidden story buried in the coppered breath of 2015 itself. Next. 1999 Lincoln Penny. Today we plunge into the electrifying mystery of the 1999 Lincoln Penny, a coin so seemingly routine, so mass-produced, that most hands never pause to question its existence. Yet what if a small mistake made it one of the rarest coins ever struck? What if a fleeting glitch in the machinery, a slip in the manufacturing script, or an intentional, but undocumented, experiment birthed anomalies so profound that this humble cent now stands at the epicenter of one of the most gripping enigmas ever to haunt the world of U.S. coinage, because in 1999, as efforts ramped up toward the new millennium and the mint navigated equipment upgrades and die maintenance backlogs, something extraordinary happened. Coins began surfacing with unexpected doubled features, ghost impressions trailing letters like silent echoes in metal, mint marks that appear and disappear at impossible angles, initials that vanish unless viewed under extreme magnification, all suggesting that somewhere amid the Denver and Philadelphia press rooms, standard protocols fractured and experimental die configurations slipped through quality control, unleashing a wave of coins with off-center strikes that distort Lincoln's visage without disturbing the legends, planchet flaws that reveal blistering and laminations inconsistent with known zinc, copper blends, misaligned collars that shift the date closer to the rim while the words "I and God We Trust" appear compressed or stretched in different directions, and full die clashes that imprint faint reverse detail, columns of the memorial ghosting across Lincoln's cheek as though another coin pressed invisibly through from the back, defying all expectations of standard mint operation, which naturally sparked feverish obsession among collectors who began documenting each variation, comparing ghosted initials, reverse die artifacts, doubled Liberty spacing, and faint residual mint marks that hovered just above the fields like hidden signatures, feeding wild Theories of lost die trials, suppressed test strikes, unauthorized reverse hubs crossfitted to 1999 obverse dies, or even secret after-hours experimentation that left behind a handful of coins slipping quietly into circulation, unnoticed by grading services and unrecorded in official logs, and when retired mint personnel began speaking quietly of unexplained die shortages, misfiled tool orders, and undocumented reassignments during the transition to new digital alignment systems, the tension ratcheted up, because each new story matched a coin in hand, specimens found in change jars with invisible FG initials only visible under angled LED light, pennies bearing faint secondary strike echoes beneath e pluribus unum, planchets with microcracks suggesting foreign material intrusion, and reverse legends with subtly shifted spacing that aligns with no known die pairing but appears consistently across clusters of coins from disparate sources, leading to the terrifying realization that these anomalies are not isolated freaks but patterns, signals of a break in procedure or possibly a hidden experiment gone live, and so begins the treasure hunt, collectors scouring rolls, magnifying images, building databases, sending suspect examples to microscopists, exchanging stories of mintmark phantoms, doubling registers that skip letters entirely, phantom rims that bulge or twist, and letters that flicker as you tilt the coin, as though alive, and every discovery reignites the question. How many more of these 1999 pennies exist, hidden in old coin collections, forgotten from childhood jars, or tucked into envelopes in estate lots, coins never meant to exist, bearing the fingerprints of invisible processes, undocumented die trials, or systemic oversights at the cusp of a new era? And each anomaly uncovered not only deepens the mystery but intensifies the emotional stake for every hunter, for within these humble scents lies the potential to unravel a chapter of U.S. minting history that was never acknowledged, to expose a rupture in the narrative of perceived perfection, and to reveal that somewhere, perhaps swirling quietly in ordinary circulation, a 1999 Lincoln penny waits, carrying all the anomalies at once: ghost initials, full die clashes, double date, misaligned mintmark, planchet flaws fused into a single specimen, and when it is found, it won't merely confirm the theories, it will rewrite the story of what the mint allowed to slip through, what procedures quietly failed, what secrets were never logged, and what a small mistake in 1999 quietly transformed one of the most ordinary coins into one of the most tantalizing mysteries in numismatic history. Next. 1995 Lincoln penny. Today we plunge headfirst into one of the most confounding and electrifying mysteries ever to emerge from the machinery of the United States Mint, the 1995 Lincoln cent, a seemingly ordinary penny that, under the scrutiny of collectors and historians alike, reveals a tapestry of anomalies so baffling, so unprecedented, that they challenge everything we thought we knew about modern coin production and the fragile, fallible hands behind it, because what if, deep within the clanking chambers of the Philadelphia and Denver mints, a single unnoticed misalignment or experimental die trial unleashed a ripple effect so severe that it accidentally birthed one of the rarest and most controversial coins of the late 20th century, a coin whose story is laced with errors invisible to the naked eye, whispers of minting sabotage, and rumors of suppressed memos buried in government archives. It begins with what some believe was a routine die setup in early January 1995, but what if that die wasn't fully retired from a previous year's batch, carrying with it remnants of an older engraving schema, leading to what numismatists now identify as the infamous double die obverse, where Lincoln's profile and the bold letters of Liberty appear shadowed, not from wear, but from a chilling mechanical doubling that was neither intended nor reported? What if this wasn't a one-time accident, but a sign of systemic oversight, with multiple machines potentially producing variances of the same doubling, some so subtle they evade detection even today? And as the mint scrambled to correct the mistake, did they inadvertently create even stranger hybrids, coins bearing ghost-like secondary impressions, misaligned design elements, and initials either partially missing or appearing where they shouldn't be at all? And who were the first to notice? Those sharp-eyed collectors scanning bank rolls, stumbling upon these oddities and feeling that instant jolt of panic and exhilaration, wondering whether they'd found something not just rare, but fundamentally inexplicable, because as reports surfaced from numismatic circles across the country, it became clear that this wasn't just one mistake but potentially dozens of unique variations, some showing clashes between dies that had never been paired, others revealing planchet impurities or blanks that shouldn't have passed inspection. Could it be that in the chaos of a rushed production schedule, exacerbated by mid-90s budget constraints and internal shakeups, a batch of experimental dies or outdated engravings was reintroduced into circulation under the radar, leading to design inconsistencies that now haunt the memory of former mint employees who refused to go on record, And what of the mysterious absence of mint marks on certain Denver coins? Or the barely there impressions of Lincoln's jacket folds that suggest incomplete striking pressure or improperly annealed planchets, anomalies so obscure they went unnoticed for years, hiding in plain sight within millions of ordinary cents. And then there are the stories, the whispered accounts of retired engravers and die technicians who speak, only in confidence, about an undocumented die revision that may have been tested and discarded in 1995 but never officially logged, leading to speculation that some cents may carry the faint imprint of a design prototype never meant to reach the public. Imagine the thrill, the madness, of collectors scouring every cent from that year, their eyes straining under magnification to detect the smallest anomaly, the slightest variation in the curvature of a serif or the spacing between letters, desperate to find just one more clue in a puzzle that refuses to be solved. And when the 1995 double die obverse was finally acknowledged by experts, it only deepened the mystery, for its exact origins remain uncertain, with some arguing it was the result of a single improperly manufactured die, while others insist multiple dies must have been involved, each with their own quirks, hinting at a far wider systemic failure or deliberate experimentation. The mystery compounds when collectors begin discovering cents with reverse design elements, partial brockages, and incuse impressions suggesting multiple strikes or severe die fatigue, with some even showing signs of feet or finger damage, as if the very equipment meant to ensure precision had become corrupted or misaligned. And as the coin community mobilized, cataloging dozens of strange 1995 specimens with overlapping features and unexplained marks, the question emerged, were these merely coincidental mechanical errors, or evidence of a deeper truth the mint has never fully addressed? Perhaps these weren't errors at all, but fragments of a secretive die trial program, now lost to time, or worse, deliberately erased. And then came the shocking appearance of a 1995 cent where Lincoln's bust appears not only doubled, but eerily stretched, distorted as if pulled by unseen hands, sparking theories of experimental hubbing techniques or pressure calibration mishaps. This discovery was followed by another, a cent with a shadowed mint mark that didn't match known placements from either the Philadelphia or Denver facilities, suggesting a rogue die or perhaps even clandestine manipulation. Could it be that amidst all the reported varieties, the truth lies in a hidden set of master dies that were briefly, mistakenly, or deliberately activated? And what does it mean when so many of these coins show internal die breaks in the same regions, Lincoln's eye, the tops of the lettering, or the base of his neck? Is it coincidence, or were all these coins part of a batch destined for destruction, somehow escaping into circulation, each one carrying a silent scream of bureaucratic failure or willful disregard? And as the mystery intensified, collectors began forming underground groups, pooling their findings, comparing microscopic details, documenting instances of die polishing so aggressive it erased key design elements. And still, new variants keep surfacing: shadow Lincolns, ghostly memorial outlines, nearly imperceptible tripling of the date, each discovery reigniting questions about how such blunders slip through layers of quality control and how many more remain undetected in jars, drawers, and pockets across America. And through it all, one terrifying idea lingers: what if the most extraordinary 1995 cent has yet to be found? What if a truly unique specimen lies dormant in circulation, unknown, unrecognized, its secrets intact? And what if finding it would not only reshape our understanding of this coin's legacy, but force the US Mint to finally confront the full extent of what happened during that strange, chaotic year? So as we peel back every layer of this numismatic enigma, ask yourself this: is it just a penny, or is it a cipher from history, a sliver of copper that defies explanation, and a reminder that even in the most ordinary objects, the most extraordinary mysteries can reside? Stay tuned, because the story of the 1995 Lincoln cent is far from over, and the next revelation might be waiting in the next coin you touch. Last. Today we unlock the hidden vaults of a mystery that has haunted numismatists, confounded historians, and sparked an underground obsession that shows no signs of slowing down: the enigma of the 2004 Lincoln cent, a coin that by all accounts should have been just another mundane issue in a long line of modern pennies, yet instead has become the nucleus of one of the most astonishing error-riddled episodes in the entire history of US coinage. And it all begins with a single question: what if a small, seemingly insignificant mistake during the minting process opened the floodgates to a cascade of anomalies so strange, so meticulously camouflaged, that they would go undetected by casual hands for years, while quietly amassing a legend among collectors who now believe the 2004 cent may hold clues to a deeper, more systemic breakdown inside the mint's walls? What if behind the everyday facade of a copper-plated zinc penny lies a trove of errors, some so slight they whisper rather than shout, but so numerous and bizarre they suggest not a single failure, but a sequence of events that reads more like a conspiracy than coincidence? And it begins with the dies, because while 2004 wasn't slated for a design change, insiders began noticing uncharacteristic die fatigue early in the production year, with numerous reports of obverse and reverse devices appearing unusually mushy, distorted, or exhibiting what some termed phantom doubling, an effect resembling traditional doubled dies but lacking the mechanical hallmarks, sparking whispers about whether these were the result of improper hubbing or unreported die trials never meant to reach production. And then came the anomalies no one could ignore, Lincolns whose faces bore ghost-like distortions as if a second image had tried to rise through the metal, letters in Liberty and, In God We Trust, appearing slightly askew, offset just enough to raise alarms among the experienced but subtle enough to be dismissed by untrained eyes. What if those subtle shifts weren't isolated quirks but part of a wider malfunction involving feeder misalignment or die rotation? And what if in correcting the problem, technicians actually created even more varieties, some with misstruck rims, others with inexplicable radial lines, and still others with die polish marks so aggressive they erased parts of Lincoln's jacket or beard entirely? Could these really be accidents, or were they desperate attempts to cover up a botched die trial program, one rumored to have included design tweaks never greenlit for public release? And as collectors began comparing their 2004 specimens, they found inconsistencies not just in the strikes, but in the mintmarks themselves, with several cents from Denver displaying a tilted D or one whose placement was lower than documented norms, leading to suspicions that a rogue or outdated punch had been briefly brought back into service. And then, most inexplicably, came the reports of 2004 cents with no visible mintmark at all, coins supposedly struck in Denver but bearing none of the identifying letters, despite being discovered in bank rolls circulated exclusively in the western United States. How could this happen in an era of computerized quality control and digital oversight, unless certain batches had been rushed, or worse, quietly redirected through unofficial channels, bypassing traditional inspection processes entirely? And things grew stranger still when researchers documented at least two known examples of 2004 cents exhibiting what they called mirror shadowing under magnification, a phenomenon where faint outlines of reverse lettering from the reverse side appear ghosted on the obverse, a sign of potential die clash, but one with no known precedent for that year's design. What caused it, and why were those coins never recalled? And what about the quietly circulated internal memo, referenced in a 2009 numismatic journal, which hinted at a series of irregularities involving improperly heat-treated planchets during early 2004 production, planchets that may have shrunk microscopically under pressure, warping the detail and giving rise to the soft, sometimes melted-looking features collectors began calling meltdown Lincolns? And could this explain the specimens where Lincoln's eye appears recessed or even missing, as if erased by a phantom etcher, or those bizarre cases of coins where one or more of the initials VDB, the silent signature of the original engraver, seemed to vanish, fade, or elongate, stretching unnaturally into the rim? And while mainstream sources dismissed most of these as die wear or overpolishing, why then did so many experts quietly acquire these pieces for their own private collections, often paying premiums in trades and refusing to speak publicly about their motivations? Could it be they knew something the rest of US didn't, something unconfirmed, undocumented, and too volatile to be acknowledged by the mint itself? And then came the tale of the Pennsylvania hoard, a sealed bag of 2004 cents discovered in an abandoned bank deposit box, containing not one or two but dozens of coins exhibiting the same erratic doubling in Lincoln's profile, some with clash marks so severe they resembled ancient hammered coins rather than modern U.S. currency. Experts examining the hoard were divided. Some called it the result of extreme die deterioration, others hinted at an intentional test of a new hubbing process quietly scrapped due to unpredictable results. And as debate raged on forums and in hushed corners of coin shows, more irregularities surfaced, coins with sharply raised rims, indicating collar failure, and others with smoothed or convex fields, suggesting improperly annealed blanks. What does it all mean? And why was 2004, a year with no commemorative cent, no redesign, and no announced policy shifts, suddenly ground zero for one of the most intricate clusters of production abnormalities in recent history? And what does it reveal about the inner workings of the mint, the pressures they faced during a time of post-9/11 security tightening and equipment overhauls, when new machines were being introduced and older technicians were being cycled out? Was there a moment, a forgotten week or month, when chaos reigned behind closed doors, allowing damaged dies to be used, rejected planchets to slip through, and unvetted design modifications to enter circulation? Could a breakdown in training, communication, or oversight have opened a brief, unrepeatable window where coins struck during those anomalous hours became unintentional testaments to a system under strain? And what of the technician, referenced only as JR in a now-deleted internal newsletter, who allegedly filed a report regarding unusual noise and vibration in a Denver coining press in early April 2004, a report that was never followed up. What if that machine, already out of calibration, continued striking hundreds or thousands of off-center or misaligned cents, and what if most of them were melted down, but a few escaped into circulation, carrying with them the signature of that critical mechanical error? And perhaps most chilling of all, what if a prototype reverse, one rumored to feature experimental spacing between the columns of the Lincoln Memorial, was mistakenly used on a handful of coins, its design so close to the standard version that no one noticed at the time, but different enough that high-resolution comparison reveals a discrepancy in architectural alignment and shadowing? What if that version is still out there, undetected, in the wild? And as we peel back layer after layer of this numismatic labyrinth, one thing becomes clear: the 2004 Lincoln cent is not just a coin, but a cryptic artifact, a symbol of a moment in minting history when something went deeply, unmistakably awry, and yet instead of disappearing into obscurity, it has become a siren call for collectors and historians who sense that the full truth has never been told. Because what if the rarest, most anomalous 2004 cent hasn't been discovered yet? What if the one with the clearest doubling, the most defiant mintmark misplacement, or the cleanest clash mark is still hiding in a change jar, or worse, already lost to time? And so the hunt continues, driven by obsession, fueled by fragments of truth, and deepened with every new find, every unexplained shadow in the design, every expert disagreement that ends in silence. The 2004 Lincoln cent is more than metal, more than history, more than mistake. It is a numismatic riddle wrapped in copper, whispered about in vaults and forums and private collections, where speculation borders on mania, and where the next twist could come not from a lab or press room, but from your very own pocket. Stay tuned, because this story is only beginning, and what lies beneath the surface of the 2004 cent may just redefine what we thought was possible from one of the most overlooked coins in American history.